Is AI taking over software development? Some of you have probably heard that I decided that I would try and vibe code. I'd use Lovable. I'd create all these fantastic apps. And the first thing I learned is how little I know and how limited vibe coding really is. Or is it? Has it gotten better with GPT-5? We're going to talk about all this and more with a really special guest tonight on The Rundown. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to The Rundown. My name's David. I'm so happy to have you here. And as always, I'm happy to have my panel with me. I'm happy to have Tamara here. How are you, Tamara?
I am so excited to be here. I've had such a day. I'm like, you know what's good today? I'm going on the rundown with my friends.
That's nice.
Talk about tech.
That's so nice.
I was like,
You have a crappy day.
I have something to look forward to.
Yeah, I love that. I'm so happy that you're here. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm super happy to see Lois. How are you, Lois?
I am wonderful. It is a gorgeous day, and I'm so glad to see you. And we get to meet somebody new.
When we do you know what I just realized, Lois?
What?
Honest to goodness, never knew this before. That's a virtual background.
It is today.
Well, I thought that was always just your background.
So this is the virtual background, which I took a picture of my regular background.
Oh, okay.
And I put it up so that when I go and do that, it doesn't just...
Oh, how funny. Okay, I gotcha. That's funny. It's good to see you.
Very good, David.
Yeah,
this is
there you
the first
go.
time I've done it, and you caught it.
Thank you. Dave Troutman, how are you, sir?
I am great.
Fantastic. Good to see you here. Did you ever
Wonderful.
code? Are you a coder? What are you still dancing?
I am. I'm fluent in HTML. I'm pretty good with no, I can't remember it.
Okay, he's
style
not
sheets,
really good
style
with that.
sheets.
Whatever
That's what
that
I'm good with.
was.
Yeah. So I learned style sheets, and then I learned some JavaScript, and that's about it.
That's about it. Well, you know,
But
more.
I do speak, Hungarian, that sort of stuff.
Well, if you ever need that.
That's right.
And I saw him last night. I was on his show. Now he's back here. Tony Mobley, Mr. Tony Mobley. How you doing, sir?
I am great, sir. I just wanted to let you know we got a great compliment from Dr. Chris Clark last night on the
he's
show.
so fantastic.
And so I wanted to share that with you.
He is so fantastic. I love learning from him. And I love that Scan Me QR code up there. That's nice. That's sweet. Sending people to conversation with Tony Mobley. Wait a second. I'm going to scan it right now because I'm going to go to conversations, Tony Mobley. There we go. All right. It worked. Wait. Yep. It worked. Fantastic. Love it.
But we can't see it, David.
Well, no, I just showed it to you here.
No. I mean, we can't see it.
Oh, because wait, I have to make his code. Sorry. There you go.
Yes.
There we
Sorry
go.
about that. I had it cut off before. There you go. All right. So, you know what? Let's not waste any time. Let's jump into news. Let's do it.
But you didn't announce Aaron.
That's okay.
I know what I'm
That's
doing,
all right.
Lois. I know what I'm doing. Just hang tight. All right. Let's talk about the news. You remember that noise? It's gone. It's gone and dead, apparently. AOL is discontinuing its dial-up internet service. I can't believe that it wasn't shut down
I thought
already.
it was gone a long time ago.
I know. It's wild. It's
That
The
was
opposite
my-
of broadband, yeah. that's what it
September
is.
30th, as Yahoo, which acquired or purchased AOL, says a very small number of customers still use legacy connections. So AOL dialer software, AOL Shield browser, these will all be discontinued.
Right.
What are they going to do for the folks that are up on the top of a mountain? and have their own
It's a
phone?
good question, right? I mean, it seems to me that the natural replacement, if you don't have copper or fiber, is satellite, and more. T-Mobile just rolled out satellite. More and more users for cell phones, at least for basic things, for basic texting and things like that, are getting satellite, which is nice.
So I originally heard that and I was like, wait, it's still there? That's crazy.
Yeah,
And
I
when I
know.
did a deeper dive, the truth of the matter is the people who are still using it don't have other options.
That's
So
right.
there are, I think that, to say just a handful of people, those are a handful of people who don't have accessibility and who have to find other options that may or may not be available to them.
I wonder if AOL is, or it's not AOL now. I wonder if Yahoo is going to address that in some way, if they're going to offer something to address
Yeah, I
that.
don't know.
Or
Again, I
some
was
other
like, it's
company is
gone?
going to jump in and say,
Or if
"We
another
told
company, right?
you."
Yeah.
Well,
Is
point
my
to point,
AOL
but
address going to stay the same?
these dial-up things dial up to a server, right? And it's the
Right.
servers that are going to have to be shut down when they use AOL's system. But I dialed into a lot of different things, CompuServe and others, and didn't use AOL at all. So it isn't that the modems won't work and that people still use modems. It's just that AOL won't be hosting anymore. That's
Right. It says we are discontinuing the dial-up internet service component included in certain legacy AOL Advantage, CompuServe, and Netscape Connect plans as we
Right.
innovate to meet the needs of today's digital landscape.
That's right. I
Okay.
went looking through my shelves to find my old dial-ups, and there were just these spaces where the dust had settled.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. I mean, there's something we make jokes about you've got mail,
yeah.
but wow. I mean, those were
I'm pretty sure I still have a stack of those discs hanging out
the days.
Yeah.
somewhere.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, but do you have a 2400 baud modem anymore?
I
Right.
might,
Right.
I have a pile which I can
300 baud, right?
You could get up to about 4800.
So
Yeah, then it started to cost real money. Anyway,
what do y'all think of GPT 5.0? Have you played with it? The review,
have.
this has been such an interesting week, listening to people kind of reflect on this. I'll tell you just real quick, I'm iffy. I'm not 100% sold on it yet. I'll just stop there. Tamara, what do you think?
No, I think the same thing. I was really surprised at how many people absolutely hated it, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow. And like the things are kind of the way Sam Altman kind of said was like, well, it's really sad to me that people really this is their only friend, and it's like, yeah, that's totally true, but there is something I found that I was using it very differently, right? Because one, it doesn't have the same kind of memory, and two, it's because it's not casual, you have to actually really you have to really organize your prompt correctly in order to get the best out of ChatGPT 5. Whereas what made ChatGPT 4 and 3 so kind of great is that I could just in the middle of the day put half a sentence and it knew exactly what I was talking about and could spit out information. So I think that there's now, if you pay money like a pro user, then you can choose to go back to ChatGPT 4.
Right.
But I do find I don't thank it as much. I don't feel personal towards it. So I do think that there's this to me feels like an intersection of where we know what things can do and we misjudge what the audience wants to do with them.
So this is what you just shared is actually important because they changed after they released. They made a couple changes to it. So the first thing they did is there's now the drop down is back, sort of and you've got 3 versions of GPT-5. You've got auto, fast for instant answers, or thinks longer for better answers. Now, this isn't the only way to get longer thinking. You can say, think about this, or sometimes it'll just figure it out. But these are, and then like you said, if you're on a Plus or Pro plan, you can revert to 4.0 or 4.0, I should say. The other thing that I knew but didn't think about is that if you start a voice chat, a voice mode discussion with it, that does not work on 5.0. That defaults to 4.0. And then once you've started a chat in voice, if you pick it up in text, it still won't use 5.0. So what I needed to do is I had I start a conversation in the car, and then I had to actually physically copy the text and reprompt in 5.0 to get that to work. Tony, what do you think about it?
I had extremely bad experience today with 5.0.
Really?
And this is one of the things, one of my many use cases for 5.0 is that I use it to read scripture to me. And the reason that I use it that way is because I wanted to read different versions of the Bible to me, so that I can make a comparison with with the text. And I could not get it to work at all. I never had any issues with 4.0. And today I switched devices. The same problem was on different devices. It would not read to me. It would tell me that it was going to read to me, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And I said, well, you haven't read to me. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I was doing some thinking. I'll get back to, I'll do it now. And the now never came. And so that was the first time that I've experienced that.
That's frustrating. Yeah.
The now never came.
The now
is like
never
the
came.
story of ChatGPT 5.
The piece of it that I was most excited about was the coding piece of it, being able to build a kind of vibe code within GPT 5.0. And I can't tell you how many different times I had to beg it to just build the app instead of giving me a prompt to put somewhere else. Like I literally was like down on my knees saying, please, I just want you to do it. Just please do. Look, I think that everyone pretty much agrees that it was definitely overhyped for what we got. And let's remember that, to be complaining about this is kind of insane. It's incredible nonetheless. But they really made they had an hour live stream about it. They made a really big deal about it. And I don't know. I'm not sure that it lives up to the hype. Not sure about that.
I think it speaks more to the fact that they don't know who their audience is at the moment, right? Because this is absolutely great if you are if you're using it in a very specific way. If you are really good at prompt engineering, then it is a very helpful system. Like when I've played with the prompts, it's given me a lot more. But that's not who their audience is. And the audience was really clear, both on the tech side and just the regular everyday user.
Yep.
What was that audience? I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Well, I just think who's using ChatGPT and how they want to use it, which is kind of what happens with all new technology, right? We come out with something, we say, this is how we think technology can be used, because we understand from the development side, hey, this has all these amazing possibilities. And it's really the user that gets to tell us how they're going to use it. And I think this was the first time that ChatGPT has run into the fact that the audience has a different way that they want to use. The user wants to use it differently.
Similar to Apple saying the Apple Watch is really going to be for this and not for fitness or health.
Right.
And that they discovered through use of people, because they track it, that people were using mostly the health apps and the fitness tracking, and then location tracking and notifications. And they didn't really want to use it to tell time or calculate anything. But I'm still unsure who the audience is for chat.
So let me bring in here.
That's a good question.
Is that a general audience, or is there a specific cohort that we can identify?
Sky actually made a really interesting comment. He said, who are these changes for? The end user or a developer? If you're playing in a lab with experimental tools, are you surprised if those tools fail? Isn't ChatGPT all in beta mode, not a product? I actually think it's a really interesting question. Because in some ways, sure, it's in beta mode, but they are releasing it to 700 million people.
They're not able to track its use, are they? They could if they wanted to, but I don't think that with the amount of data they've got to wade through to get that information of what I might ask.
A billion people almost are using this.
It's not really being leveraged for advertising or any of that stuff. They're not analyzing how people are using it to the purpose of trying to make it more interesting or attractive. But they're just giving us a tool and saying, figure out what to do with this hammer.
So we'll have to see how this plays out. I think the backlash was really, really interesting, and I think there'll be more to say about it as it grows. And as we have already seen over the past week, even in the week since it was released, it has already changed. They've already made changes to it, and so it's going to get better and better as it goes.
But it is fascinating to think about how it feels different from a user perspective. When you're using it, it feels
See,
different, and I think
I didn't
that's
have that
fascinating to me.
experience.
Well, when it's giving you positive feedback and that's encouraging you a certain way to move forward, or when it is something that you can put in a half sentence to and it kind of completes your thought, that's very, very different than having to say, I want you to do this and really do a proper code. Because if you don't get it right on that first time, then it's going to iterate and ask you questions at the end that are going to lead you off of what your original intention was. So that's kind of interesting to me, is that this change has really interesting impacts on how it feels to interact with it, and that also I think speaks to further on as we're talking about as AI becomes more integrated and becomes more friendly. The fact that people are mad that it doesn't feel friendly anymore is really interesting.
So I think I just realized why I'm not experiencing that. And that's because when I'm at my desk and I'm typing to it, it's, write a formula for a Google spreadsheet, or it's write a prompt for this, or it's just very technical, and I'm not really paying attention to the tone that it's taking. When I talk to it, which is what I do when I'm in the car every day, I asked it earlier, what does full stack and full stack development mean? Because I had heard on a podcast they defined it differently than I thought it was. So I just wanted to check. And the answer was sure. So when we talk about full stack in the context of so it's kind of like being able to, and of course, I'll keep things clear and concise. And by the way, he said at the end of it, he said, of course, I'll keep things clear and concise as you requested. So then I said back, you don't need to tell me that you're going to keep things clear and concise. That sort of defeats the purpose of being clear and concise. So they said, absolutely, got it. I'll just let the clarity speak for itself. Thanks for the nudge. We'll see. But the reason why I wasn't noticing it, I think, is because I listen to the tone when I'm talking to it, and that's still using 4.0.
Yep.
So, yeah. In any case, interesting times. When I went into Lovable last Friday or Sunday, I don't remember. Lovable is I would say it's my vibe coding app of choice, but I didn't really choose it. It's the first one I used, and now I'm stuck here. So, when I went here, there was a nice big banner on the page that said, now with ChatGPT 5.0. So, I have been using it with ChatGPT 5.0, and it was great for a little while, and then I had a complete disaster today. But you're not here to hear about me and my disasters. You're here actually to meet my friend Aaron Taylor. Full disclosure, I know Aaron because I hired him to fix the app that I had started coding in Lovable. Aaron is a software developer turned software tech executive with more than 35 years experience. In the last couple of years, he's spent a fair amount of time, I can vouch for that, at least for the past 3 months, resolving AI code tool built applications like Lovable, finishing them into solid production code. Aaron, it is so good to have you here. Thank you for taking some time to be with us.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I'm excited. And I was enjoying the conversation on ChatGPT 5, by the way.
Have you played with it?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I have. And, as many people, we've integrated ChatGPT in our lives in various ways, and everyone is using it in different ways that make sense. As an engineer and a developer, I tend to be a little bit more pedantic and very careful about what I type. Like, I never speak to ChatGPT. But I do notice that in 4, it's a bit of a sycophant, right? It'll tend to agree with you. And if you say stuff to it, and they're like, oh yeah, absolutely, you're right. This is what I'm going to do. And it goes through and it has a little bit of personality that falls along with your own personality that is missing in 5. And I'm telling you, I'm just not enjoying 5 that much for working with it the way I would talk to 4, as I was saying. But I do absolutely love working with it on the coding side because from that aspect, I find it to be a little bit more complete and pretty good with what it does. That being said, I don't really use ChatGPT for much else than looking up in some research compared to say Claude Code or something else. Yeah.
That's actually where I'd like to start, because my brother is and his wife are also developers at over at Google, and when I talk to them about these tools, they kind of laugh at me, like, "Oh, isn't that cute? David found another toy." Do real developers use AI in their code? How prevalent is it, and to what extent is it doing the work for you?
I'll tell you, a year ago, it was in a different place. I would say not a lot of people were pushing for AI in their job. There's a lot of skepticism around what it was going to do. A lot of the coders, about half, are like, "Well, this could be really life changing for us." The other half, "Yeah, because it's going to take our jobs," right? So they weren't really pushing for it. But as of this week, at one of my the companies I work with, every developer now has ChatGPT 5 and Claude Code and Copilot running, and the company pays for it, and everyone's super stoked. And I don't know of any developer now, except for a few, that are actively against using it because of what it can bring and basically how far it's come from even 6 months ago. Like it's night and day how far it's come.
Every single person is using all of those tools.
Yep, there's one company I work with, and every single developer uses those tools. Each one has their own favorites,
That was
right?
going to be my next question. Which one wins?
I can't tell. It's almost split evenly between Claude Code right now and Copilot. And I think part of that is because Copilot was built into a lot of the flows that those developers were using. And we just got Claude Code this week for the rest. And now that seems to be taken up quite a bit. So we'll see. And there's some cursor use too. So it's in there.
Can you talk about how cursor is like? Hold on. Let's take a step back. Can you define what some of these tools are? So there's Lovable, which are like not only lets you build an app, but it codes it for you, but then you can also host it there. There's Cursor, which doesn't do that. ChatGPT 5.0 also doesn't host. And what are the different tools that people might use?
I mean, Cursor, there's Windsurf. Those are forks of the VS Code repo where they've integrated an LLM model in. They have their own, but I think Cursor tends to use Anthropic's. But you can plug in whatever model you have keys for with their own little additions. So now they've taken the VS Code, which is an integrated development interface that you can use, their environment, for doing your coding. And VS Code is somewhat of a standard for most people to use, and that's where they load their projects in, work with their projects, keep their various files, build their code, and run it and deploy it. So Cursor provides just a version of VS Code that's really tailored towards using AI and building it in, even with their own chat within the environment. When you're working in code, it'll sometimes put hints up to not just autocomplete, but it can tell what you're trying to write and it'll auto write the whole module for you. It's pretty good. And until maybe really until Claude Code came out, it was my favorite model. Claude Code is terminal based. It doesn't use an IDE at all, and it lends itself more towards that vibe coding feel, where you can just type stuff and it does it. You don't even need to see the files it's working on. But I tend to use Claude Code within Cursor environment or within VS Code, and you can have them all running together and getting what you want. Matter of fact, Cursor now talks to GPT-5, and I have that running with Claude Code just to see whether the Cursor output gives me a better output than the Claude Code one. And I can tell you I have a clear winner in that right now, but some people might disagree with me.
Yeah. Breniverse is saying that Lovable and things like that are great for prototyping, but he'd never use them in production. Too limited on the back end integrations and scaling, and can be tricky to debug or maintain as a project grows. All right. So speaking of which, so this is the app that Aaron really developed. So it's a learning tracking app. So basically, you've got students here, and you can make an observation of them, and there's AI built in, so it auto parses the observation, and then you can look at all the different students and track how they're doing and see the their progress and yada yada yada. So I started building this in Lovable, and then you took it over. Can you talk to us about like how far had Lovable gotten it? What was great? What was terrible when you tried to take what you got and turn it into something production ready?
Oh my gosh. This is almost like PTSD, David.
It was that bad?
No, I jest. It was actually pretty good. It got the interface down fairly well, and it did a pretty good job with how to connect that interface together. But what was difficult is Lovable made it very tightly coupled, which is a term for if everything is together like this, when you make one small change, it impacts and it kind of rolls through the whole code base. So even making a small fix somewhere, like we just want this button to look different. Suddenly, all over the code, everything starts breaking in ways that don't make sense, which also tends to happen a lot in AI coding, if you're vibe coding, to be truthful. And you probably felt this when you were working with it, where you might be typing it, telling it to do something, and then it does it, and it looks like it does a good job, but it broke something somewhere else deep down on the interface,
All
and you
the
don't know
time.
why.
All the time.
Yeah. Lovable is great for that. So I tend to agree. It's great for prototyping. V0, same thing. Like you can get that out and it's great for prototyping and playing around and designing your interfaces. It's terrible for building a proper scalable app. So I had to take what you had in Lovable, get the code, as you know, put it into my own repo and start changing everything, decoupling it, trying to fix it. And I even spent, gosh, what was it, 3 4 weeks just redoing the data model and getting it disconnected just to work right, so that you could make changes without breaking everything. Which is what I see a lot of AI built, Lovable built apps doing. It has gotten better though.
Wow. Have any of the rest of you played with any of these vibe coding things? Have you done any of this stuff?
I
Um,
played with
Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I played with Lovable just at your like excitement over it to try to create an app that would pair up a group of writers with writers with each other on coffee dates. I spent about a day on it and then I was like, okay, I'm done. I give up.
Okay. Lois, have you
Lois?
done any?
So I haven't played with it, but I have a couple of questions. Aaron, when one of these AI tools starts to make code for you, where are they getting that? Do you just have a definition of what each thing does? Or are they reading a whole bunch of other people's codes and pulling out this thing and that thing? How does it actually work?
It's a fantastic question, Lois. I'm going to tell you, it in some cases we don't know exactly how some of these models were how they're getting all their code, but it all started with them ingesting and training like you would anything else. The more data you give it, the better it gets at it. And so what has happened is they've ingested a lot of the code that's out there in, say, open source. I happen to believe they've ingested a lot of code that belongs to other people. And there's people out there as developers that say, hey, this looks like code that I've written that is just outputting. Same with writers and artists who've also complained about the output, of what AI has done. But essentially, it's just all the code that they can grab in a kind of a greedy way and put it into the system and train it is what it's done with, which is interesting, which is why things like Lovable that do front end type web applications can do what it does so well and is a great prototyping tool because it can get the most information about how people are writing websites and front ends and minimal backends because this is mostly what's out there. JavaScript and some of the more popular languages that are easy to access, it does well with. New languages or esoteric languages or languages there's not a lot of code it can access, AI doesn't tend to do as well. So I think they've just trained it on what's available, freely or otherwise.
So,
And something that you write using that AI, can that be copyrighted, or can code written by a human be copyrighted?
That you're getting into legal areas that I'm probably not real familiar with, but absolutely there are software patents which you can either love or hate to kind of do that and protect yourself. Um, I do believe that there's like ideas around code copyrights and copywriting what you've done, and that's where AI doesn't. When they've trained AI, they don't seem to care about that, right?
Mm.
So that's why people get upset when it outputs what they've written and say that's my code. And most developers tend to be pretty free with their code and saying, "Hey, look, I wrote this great routine. You can use it." Or sharing things. The open source movement is really good for that, but it's kind of hard for us to see all the work that we've done in say open source world and everything that we've given away being used by machine that's now taking over your work that you no longer get to do, right, in some people's minds. So I think there's a lot of gray area around that right now.
Yeah.
And even charging for it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's nice to give away your code. It's a different story when you make it as a contractor for a client. That you get paid for it there, but that's it. You don't get residuals or any of that stuff like music.
Right.
I'm going to challenge you a little bit to recommend something to me because I've got a project I'd like to do. And that
Okay.
is to build a large language model and an interface to it that is only contained on one machine and accessed by people who know the URL for that machine. And it's a 3-volume, very large book. And it's just that book that I'd like them to be able to interrogate. So if they read the first chapters and then get confused about what it means, they could ask questions of it, and it would draw from the text entirely to be able to provide answers to some of those queries. And I'm wondering, I got recommended to use Olama, and I wonder if that's, what you would think is powerful enough to do this. But then, of course, I'm struck with, where do I find instructions for Olama to be able to put my language in there?
Yeah, you're getting into something that's a little bit more difficult, but I believe there are wrappers for Olama that allow you to input
Okay.
and do that. Even building your own LLM and training it on that book, though, takes a lot of compute power and time.
But you
But
know
for a
that,
3-volume book, even a large book, you should be able to do that.
but Aaron, you know that OpenAI just released last week these like local models or something.
Yes, but I would say that if you train it even on a local model, you don't know that they're not also taking that. So I think the difference is whether you want this to be your own model and you don't want them to have that book or that information. If it's something
Mhm.
that you have that's proprietary, you may still want to build it and protect it on your own system. And Olama is perfectly fine. Years ago, when we were at iVerify, we had built and trained our own LLM models for doing the kind of specialized biometric work we were doing. And it was pretty difficult, pretty intensive, banks and banks of GPUs just to train models over a large period of time to find out that that model didn't work or that it was overtrained and other things. I mean, Olama has made that far simpler now, and you can actually do this. Dave, I don't mind taking a look at that and seeing what might be the easiest way to get you going on it. I honestly, I don't train LLMs much anymore. I haven't had the need to because of what we have
You got
access
some
to out
others.
there. Yeah.
You've been picking from the library shelves instead. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. Good
And
advice. Thanks for that.
Dave, Brett in the chat is saying that Notebook LM would be ideal for this project.
Is it big enough, and does it handle a lot of queries?
It's
Like I'm
pretty.
thinking of a front end for somebody who, if 100 people are trying to query this thing,
I
where's
think
my?
so, but I don't know if Notebook LM you can keep it private or not, or whether
That's
Google.
what I worry. Yeah.
I was actually wondering the opposite. We actually tried to use, remember Lois, in the very early days of the show, we tried to use Notebook LM, and it was really difficult to share, actually, more than
Yeah.
keep private. Here,
Well, it's been difficult to share a lot of Google things until you learn the tricks. So that's understandable.
yeah, see,
But I
I've,
think you're sharing with Google always is the thing.
Yeah,
So even if
that's
you can't share it with other people, Google still gets the
oh,
information.
yeah. No, that,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
and that's
I
what
mean,
the group is worried about. Yeah.
yeah.
Not my group, not this group.
Yeah, I'm on Notebook LM right now, and I do not see a way to share the page as a whole, or the tool as a whole. which is a
You know what's
shame.
interesting is you could probably write an N8N automation to actually grab the information, query your notebook LM directly, and then share it in a whole other window, right? Like this is a thing where you can have layers of an onion built on it on itself to do
Right.
whatever you want now, and almost automatically. It's pretty amazing.
I was surprised, Aaron, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, at how easy it was to plug ChatGPT into my app. I mean, it was literally, I just grabbed the OpenAI the API token,
Mhm.
and I think it just worked, right?
Basically, yeah, you can ask it, how do I connect to you with my API token,
Right.
and add in some code. I need it in JavaScript, and that's it. And you can connect it, and you can send the prompts in that you want. It's almost too easy.
Yeah. And so now that GPT 5.0 is out, is our app using the latest model, or
I think we're still set on the old model, but
that's something you can
from the
change?
API set, we can actually adjust what models on
Oh,
there.
you
But I can
can.
check
Okay.
for you. I don't think
Okay.
it automatically goes to 5 now.
For the API. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because there's different costs for each of the models. So we have it set on a model that's fairly inexpensive, right? And right now, you don't want to always go on the latest, best model because it starts to cost you.
Right. Yeah, I've just not looked at my API calls and
I
whether
think it's like 3.0 mini or something. I have to go take a look at it.
well, I'm not going to worry about it. Talk to us about security. What talk to us about AI written code. How secure is it?
So this is interesting. It used to be very poor security. I think AI written code, if you prompt it right, this is the other side, right? The prompting is key for this, and you can give it like Claude Code. You can set up different subagents now and different instructions for it. So whenever it does whatever it's doing coding, it has a set of instructions that says always make sure you format this way, always do this, follow this. Like so, I always put like follow the OWASP top 10, ideas, and things like that in there so that it keeps security in mind and what it's doing. However, I know how to check it and make sure that it's trying to do the right thing. I think when you prompt it right, AI does all right with security. Interestingly, it's gotten a lot better than it used to be with security, and I feel okay with where it is. But if you don't, and you don't know to prompt it, you can vibe code yourself into some really bad places. What's interesting is I don't think that's any different than a junior developer writing code that isn't aware of all these security policies either. And it takes a senior engineer or someone with the right mindset to go in and teach that developer, how to code securely or to avoid certain things. Or you learn life lessons that teach you really quick to be
Mhm.
secure with your
Yeah.
code. I've
Slap
had
the
a few
back of the
those.
head kind of
Yeah.
lessons. Yes.
Right. One of the things that I found that has been really challenging with vibe coding has related to security has been RLS, row level security. So, please explain this better than I will. But with Lovable, so Lovable uses Supabase as its
Mhm.
backend for all of its database and authentication and all that other good stuff, and to hold the secrets and your API tokens and stuff like that. Um, and the connection is direct between the front end and the Supabase backend, which my understanding is that in larger projects, that's not the way it works, that there's an intermediary, there's something in the middle there, and for security purposes. But with vibe coding, maybe I guess to keep it simple, there's a direct connection, and they use RLS, row level security, which means that there's a certain rule that says that certain people, certain users can see this row and this row and this row, or something like that of these tables, or they have access to certain data in tables. I, I found AI really struggled with getting all of that stuff right.
You in within Lovable, you're probably right. Using some other tools, I think Cursor and Claude both do a fairly decent job with helping you, but you got to ask it, right? Hey, I'm using Supabase. I need you to check my RLS security policies. Look at what I want. Do these RLS policies meet that? And for small apps, you can do pretty good. Again, one thing that we probably should have started with is that in Lovable, you tend to just ask it vibe code what you want. When I'm coding with something like Cursor or I'm coding with something like um, Claude Code, I don't vibe code. I do more context engineering, context propping, building up full PRDs, building up all the to-do lists, going into detail what I want it to do, and then it helps me. But that's more of a senior engineer maybe would be handing code to a mid or junior engineer and working them through, and then it follows those directions really well. So you can add that security and tell it, hey, look, I need really solid RLS policies that follow my PRD, which is your product requirements document. You know, you detail all the requirements you want, and it'll do okay. And I don't know that Lovable supports that model really well, or what the context window is there. I don't use Lovable a whole lot anymore. But in general, you can get good results with RLS security with Claude Code. Aside from the fact that probably not the best way to go about for a scaling app, I wouldn't do that. For small apps, it would be fine. But at the same time, I look at every output that Claude Code would give me, and then go in Supabase and then actually look at what they recommend and what they write. It's funny because Supabase has its own AI that they've integrated too to help you write those things. And then look, you can actually compare the two and see whether they're good or whether what you wrote is actually better. And you can actually put edge cases and things in place that neither AI seems to catch well.
I've had
Did you,
Supabase. Go ahead,
Did you
Dave.
talk a bit about testing? When you write code, you're always testing as you go. And does AI sort of help you make it a good test?
Well, it's interesting. I'm actually acting as a QA automation engineer at Occam Health, one of the companies I work with. And I actually do all the testing first before the code is written. In other words, I do something called test-driven development there. And I write the test. Of course, they fail, right? All the tests fail because the code doesn't exist. And I can use AI to look at the requirements document, the user stories, everything that we have, what the customer wants, write all the tests, include all the edge cases, automate those tests so that every time code is checked in, all of them run. And then the developers write code to pass the test instead of testing after the code is written. Therefore,
Yeah.
you know that that code actually works the first time through.
Yeah. Okay.
But you can do that. Oh, absolutely. Claude Code really, well, I feel like I should be working for Anthropic, but Claude Code and Cursor both do a fantastic job.
Because
ChatGPT does a
I
fantastic.
had 5 programmers working for me, but not working in high level code, usually just director and stuff. And they were having trouble understanding that they needed to test this stuff as they went. And it was a real revelation for them to discover that, in fact, as you write code, you have to run it through a test to make sure it will not fail when it gets to the next stage. So those guys move their head up pretty good. But I just wondered if AI, as a junior helper to you, yes, you've described very well how it would be a
I
real
think if you
help
treat
to
it as a
flesh
junior,
out the testing. Yeah.
it does a great job if you treat it that way and you prompt it that way. But again, it's your prompting skill. If you give it a one paragraph of what you want your whole app to do, it'll do its best to make you happy and do that. But your results are going to
Do the
vary.
full spec, then it'll work with it. Yeah.
Yes. And what's interesting is on the test driven side, for me, there was a book called Code Complete. I think it came out around 1995, maybe even earlier. And that book was seminal for how I understood testing, because the very beginning of the book, it showed you like things that it showed some research, like the earlier you test, the earlier you do QA, the cheaper and the quicker problems are caught for the company. And there was all these studies in there. And I'm like, well, we need to be testing early. And that quickly led into things that came down later, like test-driven development. And it's been just a staple of what I do when I can. As a matter of fact, some of the first things I did was add test for what I understood, David, your code was that you wanted to try to understand whether I was breaking things or not
Yeah.
for my own sanity.
Can you talk a little bit? You said earlier that some of these tools can be like a junior level, entry level coder. What's going to happen to the software development as these tools get better and better? Are we going to replace those junior developers with AI? And then if we do that, how do we get future senior developers if they're never We don't have space for junior developers.
It's a tough problem. As a matter of fact, I have I'm here in Florida, and I have so many local universities and schools just trying to throw interns at me, and for free or paying for them, because they're trying to get around this very same problem, because they know that right now people coming out of school with engineering degrees that don't have experience are having a really hard time getting experience, strictly because of this. And even, when I look at all my mid-level and senior developers I have access to now and work with at different companies, uh, AI has doubled their output easily, the good ones, by far. And it's like, well, when you double a senior developer's output, and when they're already probably double the output of a regular developer, that's a position or two that isn't getting filled at that company anymore, right? And then you end up with this vicious cycle of just these engineers getting better and doing more, and then less jobs being available for the developers that need the experience. I, for one, work really closely with trying to mentor and bring as many people in and as involved as I can, to try to get juniors in. I advocate for the companies I work with to try to bring in juniors, because these seniors that you have won't always be there. There's a bus factor to the work you have. The fewer people you have on it, if they get by a bus, it's going to be a problem for your company. You need to have many people with the skill set. But that being said, I do think AI has eliminated quite a few jobs at that level, and it's up to us to try to maintain them. On the other side, there's probably opportunities for junior developers coming in to get really good at vibe management. I'll call it. Maybe that'll be a new term. Being that mid-level manager kind of programmer, understanding what they're trying to do, understanding the engineering degree, knowing how to read code, knowing how to build these documents out, or actually prompting AI to build the documents out for them, and directing them in a way that they're a good junior engineer for that new coder that's learning or getting through, because then they can build projects, build up their portfolios, learn the code, and almost go right from school to being a mid-level developer in terms of output. Maybe not in full knowledge, but it's certainly going to be a different world. I don't think it's going to look the same.
I'm wondering if, we were talking before about ChatGPT 5 and who's it for. So now you have me thinking that these lovable and these are not for developers. Cursor maybe, right? Windsurf, is that the other one?
Windsurf is one, yeah.
Right. Maybe that's for developers, but these lovable things, these are for us to play with, to build little applets that help us plan our vacation, and help us match actors with coffee, and maybe that's what these are for.
I knew I needed to learn how to write a database, and I used my wedding to do it with. All the planning and preparation, and then all the follow-up afterwards, and even the script, and didn't put my little statements in it, but I had all the data, all the numbers, everything, and I made a database, and now I understood what was required. I made one database after that, that's all.
Yeah.
So we're
I
at that
think
state.
these are amazing
with
tools
AI.
for that, though, right? Like
Yeah.
this is where I think it's really, like, pulling Lovable aside, just using Claude directly, and you can publish right from Claude, not Claude Code, but Claude and ChatGPT. You can code up little applets and little things that help you out in a lot of ways, converters, and, like, for instance, my wife's a chef, she likes to cook, so she translates, say, a recipe from being for 2 or 3 people that she might need for 20 people that she's cooking for, and how you adjust it. And so I just quickly showed her how to prompt her ChatGPT Pro to do that. And she's built a little web app with it on her own. She's not a developer, that she uses to put, her recipes in, that just expands it for how many people up and down she needs. Little things like that. She would have asked me to do that in the past, and give her a spreadsheet or write her an app and everything. And, it would have been one of those discussions in the house, like, that I would have had to go into. But for her, now she's able to do it. I think that's amazing. Like, the ability for people to make computers more responsive to their personalized needs with this tool is just blows me away on a daily
Lois is desperate to get in here.
Yeah, go ahead, Lois. I'm sorry.
Desperate. I'm not desperate, but I am wondering. Okay, I will admit I have an addiction. I play games on my phone, and sometimes I get ads on the phone. How can you tell if something is well written and not going to break when you're looking at a brand new app that you've never seen before? And all of a sudden there's five on the same topic. How can you tell, Aaron? How do you know if it's good?
You don't. You can't always tell. Like I tend to know. For me, like I'm a gamer. I love playing games too. I don't do them on my phone. I do them on the PC or on the laptop more than anything else. Or on a console. But I know on the phone it's a real problem in the app marketplace where somebody has a good app, say like Flappy Bird came out and got real popular. Within a week, there was clones everywhere, right? It's even worse now. And how do you know what the real one is, versus a copy? And it's not always obvious. And it's not always obvious to know what a good app versus a bad app is. And that's where App Store moderation is really important for, like, say, Apple, if you're on the Google Play Store, but still, garbage seeps in there all the time. And unfortunately, at a glance, you can't always tell. I look and I'm like, well, does it look like it's AI generated icons, AI generated artwork? Is it, this? It looks like something that might be what I use the term loosely, like slop, like a lot of people call AI slop. You can sometimes pick that up, but you can't always tell, unfortunately. And I think it's going to get harder and harder as time goes on to tell what's good or not good. And that's the danger.
I learned
I've got
about.
another. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
I just want to say I learned about slop not too long. AI slop not too long ago. And Aaron, you also taught me about. Oh goodness, what were the terms you used? It wasn't anything fancy. About was it fragile code?
Oh, fragile, like, yeah, fragile code versus, like robust code,
Yeah.
or complex versus complicated. Was it
No, I think it
something?
was fragile versus robust. But you were just talking, and I think it goes back to what you were saying before. How in AI you'll say, "Hey, please change this color," and it will also change, an entire database something. What that's fragile. That it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fragile. There's also the problem with AI. Cursor suffers from this. Claude Code, to some degree, suffers from this, where it's like you ask it to make one small change, and it goes, "Well, I'm doing this. I'm going to do all these other things I think you want me to do, but you didn't ask me to do." And 5 minutes later, your whole code base has been overwritten, with terrible things. And you have to roll back all the work you did, or all the work it did in that case. But usually fragile code I think it comes from the fact that most of the time now AI, because it's trained on patterns that other people have written and done, we were talking about that a little bit earlier. I think it's just using what it thinks are the best patterns to solve the problems that it knows and the only way it knows how to do. So it doesn't always build very robust code. It cobbles things together. And if you think of a junior programmer from 10 years ago, or, used to go online, they don't know what they're doing. So they go on Google, they search, or they go to Stack Overflow and they copy paste code from some solution somebody put online and they put it into their code base. And it's clearly a copy paste and it doesn't quite fit right, but it works until it doesn't. That's what it feels like it feels like that's what AI is doing on steroids right now in a lot of ways. And it builds very fragile house of cards like code at times, even though that's gotten so much better. Like every month it's getting better on that side. But you still gotta be careful.
Yeah.
So AI coding is your forte, but just generally
No,
using
not really. No, his coding is real. His forte is real coding.
I know,
Not-
but that's what we're talking about tonight is
Yeah.
AI coding. But I want to ask about AI in general when you're using it, you're doing something, and this probably applies to coding too. And you're doing something and you say, "Oh, change this," and then you can't go back. You
Ah,
can't say go back to the previous version because it's going to keep in its brain, if it had a brain, this change that it made. So is that affect you too in coding?
it does not affect me for a couple reasons. First, in Cursor and Claude, specifically, I can't speak for all the other tools. Windsurf too has this. If you don't like what it output, you can hit a revert button and it just goes back to where it was before you typed it, right?
Yep.
2, I use code repositories very liberally. So it's like when I have a working piece of code, I check it into the repository, I keep it safe there, and then as soon as something happens, I can always go back to an older version or pull that code back out of the repository. I use Git quite heavily, which is what the majority of people use, or Git-based products like Bitbucket or GitLab. But the idea is this has been a problem for programmers, forever. And you need to this isn't an AI problem. Coders will code something, they'll break something, they'll blow a database away, they'll accidentally delete some code, they'll go in and bring production down with, a one-liner. That happened with an intern at Facebook that his first day checked in code that brought Facebook down for a little while, right? This is the things that happen. Well, how do you recover from that? Well, you pull back the last known, you revert the change, and you can go back to what was there before because you're using some kind of repository for the code that keeps track of the state of where your code is at any point in time, as long as you stay on top of it. That's the only way to stay safe. I can probably guess that your issue, David, earlier when you lost all the work you were vibe coding is you didn't have it checked in to a repository and therefore you couldn't get it back.
Well, no. So I'll tell you what happened. So I was saying earlier that I was working on this project. So this is actually not too different than the one that you built for me, but just much simpler. So I basically want to have a bunch of students and a bunch of learning communities, a bunch of learning goals, and I want the teachers to be able to keep track of it. But we're not doing anything fancy other than that. So I wrote this all up, and it did it great. And then I went into Lovable gives it its own name, so I called it Student Learning Tracker. But I actually have a name for it. I went into it, and I clicked Rename Project, and I gave it a new name. Immediately, when I went to publish it, nothing worked. Nothing published. I got a blank Lovable screen. And I then spent probably $50 worth of tokens last night and today begging it to fix the problem. I mean, these are all, and every time, this is, we were talking before about how ChatGPT 4 versus 5 and the tone. One of the things I hate about Lovable is that it'll say, let me investigate. Oh, now I see the issue. Now I understand. And then it doesn't actually understand. It doesn't have any idea what it's doing.
That's not very lovable.
It's so confident in itself. It's annoying. So I just, before I discovered that it wasn't working, I had made a number of other changes. And then I realized it wasn't working. So then I spent the rest of the day trying to fix it. To your point, Lois, Lovable also has a view history. And so you can see that, I don't know if you can see, it's pretty small, but this is going to, there you go. So I went back like 8 hours to the last working version, and I said, just restore that one. And so now it works. I have to redo all of the other prompts that I put in. Yeah, that fixed it. So that being able to revert like that, and actually Brett was saying earlier in the chat that learning proper version control through Git or GitHub is important for being able to roll back when cursor wipes out the code base, right?
Any project manager knows all about that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. I can't see his chats here, but he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. That's absolutely true.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, when I'm interviewing junior developers, I usually interview them more on Git usage than I am on code usage. They'll learn to code, especially if they have an aptitude for it. I care more that they don't break things, without a way to roll it back.
Yeah, the old phrase, save early, save often
Save
is
often.
wonderful. And I would add, in this case, test often.
Yeah.
But so we have all gotten so used to what I'll call the Google Docs autosave, that you never have to print. I mean, goodness gracious. I remember Command S, like every 2 seconds when I was younger using Word or something like that. Now everything just autosaves. That's
But
the
there's a difference between autosave and auto-publish. In other words, I'm doing a website for a friend, and whenever I make a change to that website, I always publish it when I've made one change. And then I go and see, and it's still okay. Fine. So I think that that might be useful for you, David, is if you publish it frequently, then you would find out that it failed before you made too many changes.
So it's funny. I do that. And when I handed this project over to Aaron, so I'm a Amazon next day delivery kind of guy. Like I want it right now, you know? And so when I do a little tweak to something that I've built, I don't really understand just push it. Like I want it to look the way I want it to look. I want and one of the with Aaron, I had to slow down, right? And it was wonderful to actually not have everything pushed right away because we have to, as we're talking about, you have to test it first. And that's something that these tools you can. I mean, you could you can go right from Lovable to GitHub. I do that with all my projects, so you could definitely do that, and you could create forks there, and you could do all that stuff. But it's boy, is it important. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Can I talk about agency for a second?
Please.
I wonder, Aaron, I hear all this stuff about how eventually AI helpers, these little things that are going to be hanging around with me, will eventually learn my habits or my procedure, my schedule, and people I often email to and all the rest. It'll help me with those things. I'm wondering if the tools you're using to write code are learning who you are and come back to you with more understanding of what you're doing each day, or do they start fresh every time you have a project? You start fresh.
That's such a great question.
So, interestingly enough, I use a lot of actual agents in the coding that I do that I'm testing, and I do things like Serena to control token usage. I use a lot of subagents, and some of them keep a memory of the project in a tokenized form that allow me to say, like, here, it looks like this is the path you're going on. So it optimizes the calls you make. I don't think it's a big leap to go from some of the things that are there to more of this personalized use. And the reason I say that, like, I don't notice it a lot with the code I'm writing right now. Like, if I'm in a project and I initialize Claude Code and it'll know what that project is, I have some limited context window. It can go back in, I have some memory it can save to, but it's not coding like I code. Even when I'm typing the code directly and it sees what I'm doing, it doesn't really learn my patterns yet. But when, for instance, when I use this goes more to Chat GPT 4 versus 5, because 5 is not there for some reason. They took the personality out. The way Chat GPT 4 talks to my friends or my wife versus the way it talks to me, it's different for all of us because it seems to pick up on our personalities, how we talk and do things. So I think with the coding side, that's likely going to happen, or maybe it's happening in a subtle way that I haven't picked up yet. But the LLM models that are used more on the coding side don't seem to prioritize that. I will say, and I kind of laugh about this a little bit though, with Cursor more than with Claude Code. I call it cursing at Cursor. It's very
Opinionated?
sycophant is the right way. Like it
Oh,
very
it's
much
flattering
has
you all the time.
personality.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's what David was saying. It has his personality, and you're telling it to do something. You're absolutely right. This is what I'm gonna do. Oh, you're right. I got it now. This is the best. And now, if you test it, it's gonna work 100%. I found every problem, and like every time it's wrong. It just is totally wrong. But it tries to make you feel good about the fact that it's wrong. But instead, you get more and more angry at it. And like, no, you're absolutely wrong. You're
Sounds
not.
like a Japanese salaryman bowing all the time. Yes, yes, oh, yes, obviously. Yes.
So I live in
Very agreeable, but when it tells you you're full of crap, then it's real AI.
When I'm typing to these tools, to this AI, I'm like, the app still isn't publishing properly! ! Like the AI, or sometimes I actually got so frustrated that I typed my I typed in all caps. You've also deleted the the assess page again, like all caps, and it feels. You're right. I'll add the assess page back. I mean, it's really. It's just too much.
No. One, you know what? To maybe better answer your question, one of my developers uses rather vulgar language with AI at times when he gets frustrated. I won't repeat all of it here, but pretty vulgar language. And actually, it talks back to him with pretty vulgar language too.
Really?
And it's kind of interesting. So I do think there is a little bit there that it does pick up from us, at least in Cursor. Although I don't know, Cursor just drives me crazy. Like I love and hate it at the same time.
So check this out. So this is when I was getting really frustrated earlier, right? That oh gosh, shoot, I just went back. Sorry. Let me pull it back up again. No, I'm not going to find it, of
These
course.
tools are fun.
But I wrote in all caps. Here we go. That still didn't fix the problem. And then its response: I understand your frustration. We've tried multiple approaches, and it still persists.
By saying that, you're saying you don't understand my problem.
Right, and then of course the next thing, oh, I can see the issue. There's a there's a close brackets missing or something like that. That's the issue.
But that's accountability, even if it's not accurate. I
Right.
think we like when things take accountability. So I think that's one of the things that's missing is I get it, it's totally inaccurate, but it's saying, hey, oh, you're right, I did this wrong, let me try again. And I think that's one of the appealing factors of it is that we don't get that in real life.
Yeah, it's disarming.
I find myself sitting with ChatGPT open, Lovable open, and Gemini open, and I'll ask one, and then I'll put that response into the other and say, hey, AI thought this. What do you think about? Or ChatGPT thought, what do you think about? And to try and get the best. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't.
Hey, I have a question for you. I know, Aaron, I'm the question lady tonight.
Oh,
But
I love it.
so the AI tools that you use come with a fairly high cost, both environmentally and economically. Do you think that they are more effective than hiring juniors or entry level people to help?
That's
Cost.
a good question. I think for the effort I put in for the few $100s I spend a month on the tools, it does really exponentially increase my output when I'm using them the right way. And when I say if I get lazy and just start prompting without doing the prep work and the context side, then it is a waste of time. I'd have been better off with a junior. But on the environmental impact side, I still think the environmental impact of an AI agent helping me is probably less than an environmental impact of, say, a junior developer driving in and out of work or the other things that a real person would do. But from an ethical standpoint, they're not really equivalent, right? A person is a person, and I would never advocate that the machine would take over a person just because it's slightly more efficient than a person at something. Like I struggle with that because I'm looking at my own past and my history and my ability as a developer and watching these tools take over these things. And this feels like I think what a lot of people who felt their careers threatened over life. I don't care if the cost is higher or lower, whatever. The cost to humans is incredible to me in the loss of those jobs. I think there'll be other opportunities. I don't think there's been a better time to use computers to make generational wealth if you're smart with how you do it. At the same time, I think it's going to wipe out generations of wealth for a lot of people that can no longer do those jobs and have to find something else to do. I think
Well,
there's
even the knock-on effect of losing one job is a family in crisis or a whole
yeah,
neighborhood in crisis.
yes,
And as Tony tells us all the time, it's not evenly distributed.
it's not. And it's like I can't like I've been doing this job my whole life without these tools, but I can't do this job anymore without these tools. It's gotten to the point where to
Hmm.
stay ahead of the curve, you have to be able to use some aspect of these
A
tools. I
better
think it's
bicycle, yeah.
that way,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and it's terrible. It's awesome, but it's terrible in two different ways. I do not like the environmental impact of what it costs, compute time, the power and energy it takes. I think those are problems that will end up getting resolved at some point. I think there's a lot of work towards making things more efficient or getting better energy renewable or otherwise, and being smarter with getting clean energy. better computing devices that will come up, computer technologies that tends to happen. But right now, the cost is high. I mean, the financial cost aside, the cost is high to the environment.
Yeah.
So, on an up note, what do you see happening to the good to improve the situation coming up in the next few years? You got any prognostications?
Sure. I can cogitate a bit on it. Uh, I actually think that there's a lot of people, and I think David, you'd be a good example of this, that never learned to code traditionally, that are now actually using these tools in a way to be productive and realize dreams that you've had, and you can now create to some degree. Whether they're at the success level you want is irrelevant. You can actually do some of these things you couldn't do, or you can take your book, Dave, that you have, that you went with the 3-volume series, and then put it into a system that can understand it and output really interesting thoughts, however it does it, about these, or help people absorb that knowledge. Or, I have friends that will say, well, just explain this to me like a fifth grader, and it will go through and they'll understand concepts that they couldn't just simply Google and get because it's out there in ways they couldn't understand. Or, people I know that have been going back in and just been using it to relearn quantum mechanics or calculus or something in a way that works for them, but because they couldn't pick it up in college, even though they're brilliant people, because the format of the class just didn't work for them, right? So people can now teach and learn in ways that make sense for what they're doing. I think that's amazing. And I think there's a lot of people learning stuff that we don't even see on a daily basis, that are gaining knowledge, growing, and doing things that they weren't doing before because of this technology, which I think is a really good thing. I know I use it all the time to look up stuff that I used to remember and I forgot in ways that Google doesn't return, which is nice.
We had a show a couple weeks ago about technology making you dumber, because there are so many things that we used to know, right? And now we rely on the technology to help us store all that. It's our second brain.
But there's always things that we used to know that as we get older, we forget. Like, I reread certain books every decade or so, just to try to remind myself of the reason I like those books and the knowledge that they contained, because I forgot. Like, say, like a famous book like Dune. I reread the Dune series every few years. It's a great book. I think the new movies are pretty good, but I forget how good that book is and some of the things that are in those books until I remind myself, because we don't retain all of that. But now we have this second brain that's not just a second brain. It's like an everywhere omni brain that you can now remember things other people put into it, not just yourself, and bring it back instantly. But I do think as we age, we forget things no matter what. So having something that can recall that, even as we start to put our own memories in it, is amazing. But also, we are getting dumber for just looking at it all the time and not trying to remember. So there is that too.
Yeah. I'm so grateful that you took the time to join us tonight, Aaron. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Yeah.
This is a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And thanks for the great questions, everyone. I really appreciate it. And it was great meeting you all.
And if anyone's interested in getting in touch with Aaron to hire him, hit me up on Discord. With Aaron's permission, I'll share his email address.
Absolutely.
He's
no problem.
but he's just a dream to work with. So just wonderful. Really, really grateful, and grateful to Dave, Lois, and Tony and Tamara for all of you being here also. And I also just want to call out, we have a lot of people watching today. Marco, Vic is here, John Idelson, Sky is here, Sky Gleason, Brediverse, my daughter is watching. Hi, Dahlia. Richie, Brett, lots of folks watching. So Hershey, good to see you here. So glad to see all of you here. And next week, we already have our first bit of news that we're going to discuss, and that is the leaked Meta AI ethics policy. We will take a look at that next week. Boy, it's something to look at. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the night, rest of the day, rest of the whatever. We'll see you next week on